Have you ever wanted to leave the modern life behind and return to the simple, uncomplicated, primitive life? Well, Zomboid's latest update really fleshes out the mechanics of a self-reliant homesteader, with animal husbandry, hunting and crafting. I wanted to see what the life of a hunter would look like in the zombie apocalypse. So join me as I survive 50 days hunting deer, preparing for a cold winter, and hoping to find any trace of other survivors. My name is Mike. My friends sometimes called me Hunter. I just wanted to get this out, to tell someone my story, if there is anyone left. Why am I even doing this? It started with a normal hunting trip. I live out in the countryside, by Echo Creek. Me and the boys have marked a couple of local trails where we've spotted deer, and it was around the time of year that the hunting gets good. I didn't spot anything on the trip out, but it's pretty rare they don't spot you and bolt when they're out in the open. There are rabbits on the highway, but that's not what I was after. It's only about an hour hike to the highway, and then another hour or so to the best part of the woods, by which time it was dark. I got my tent set up, and slept without a fire. It was too close to the trails for that. Early the next day, I packed up and headed out. Once I was in the rough area, I loaded my rifle. I thought I heard something, but in this close brush, you can never really be sure. Eventually, I was certain I was hearing deer, but I couldn't see through the dense woods. I knew they were there, but I had no eyes, so for a while I just waited. Without a sound, one appeared. As I got up, he moved behind some trees. I could tell he was there, a buck, but I didn't have a shot. I edged around, as slow as I could. He didn't hear or see me, but right as I was getting to an angle, he moved, and I lost sight. I knew he hadn't bolted, but I couldn't see him through the dense bush. Then he emerged, right in front of me. I felt confident in the shot, but he ran right after I took it. I couldn't find any blood, so I could only assume it was a miss. At the very least, he ran towards the road. I had the wrong sight for that shot. I should have known better. I wasn't finding any tracks. Until, just a glimpse through the trees, I could see a deer laid down. I couldn't tell if it was the same one, but no, it is the same one. Again, no shot. I try and get around. He's gone. I was way too eager. I followed his tracks one more time, again towards the road. The forest began thinning out, and I was sure I was right on his trail, but I was getting tired, and it started getting dark. I could feel it, I was so close, but with the darkness closing in, and this close to a road with a rifle, it was getting dangerous. No point risking my life for this. I turned on my flashlight, found a little spot just away from the road, and set up camp. The next day, I was out of supplies for the trip. It wasn't worth risking my life over. I was consulting my map when I heard something. Maybe I could spare one more hour. The trees here are way thinner. As long as I'm careful on the road, this could be it. There he is! I ran back across the road, readied my rifle, and took aim. Yes! Finally! The buck was too heavy to haul home, so I butchered it where it fell, taking the head as a trophy, and some of the bones for carving. Then I began the long trek home.
camps of refugees and bystanders have been...
I was exhausted. I just slumped down in front of the TV. Some late night ads were playing.
In 30 years, this will be all the rage.
See, I used to be a chef, working late every night. Didn't have any time for cooking. So I found this. It's a service called Factor 75, who have sponsored today's programming. Look at all these meals. Looks like fine dining, right? Wrong! This took just 2 minutes to make. Having meals arrive on the same day each week helps me maintain healthy habits, something you don't see very often in the culinary business. When a tasty, healthy meal is just a microwave beep away, you just don't eat junk food.
Look at this display of delicious
That
meal.
actually looks kinda nice. Kinda makes me want some beef ragu, made with premium, fresh, never frozen ingredients.
Sounds expensive, right? Well, if you're like me and ordering a Taco Bell every other night,
You can buy 3 times the amount of these meals for the same amount of takeout, so you save your wallet as well as your toilet. Let me show you how we cook one of these delicious meals. It's as simple as that. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50rixtertrix to get 50% off, plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50rixtertrix at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. I woke up after passing out last night, put away my things, and washed my face. Then it all started dawning on me. Why was the door not locked? Why were all the doors inside open? I loaded my gun. The bathroom window had been smashed. The spare room too. And everything of value. Gone. Well, everything except for my hidden satchel with my gun. I tried to phone the police, but my phone was gone, and another window smashed. I ran straight to the neighbours, only to find the same there. Nobody home. Every neighbour I checked was the same. Every phone either gone or not working. I went home, and the stress hit me. I hadn't eaten a real meal in days. I put some venison in the oven, and when I went to fill up my canteen, realised that the water had been switched off. Just, what the hell is going on? I sat down to collect myself, eating my steak in silence. With a full belly and time to think, I switched on the TV and flipped over to the news.
Comes into effect in many major cities. Following last night's riots and looting, disturbing information has emerged from inside the Kentucky exclusion zone. We'll not be showing the photograph, but it shows a heavily injured man in the town of West Point, along with the survivor testimonies leaking from the zone. But the president and the General John McGrew earlier maintained that the situation is under control. Even so, it appears people within the exclusion zone are dealing with a gruesome and horrific new virus. God help them.
What the hell? Riots and looting? I mean, in the big cities, sure, but out here in the sticks? I know my neighbours. We like each other. Or at least, I thought we did. I sat in my room a while the sun set, contemplating what to do next. After a restless night, I assessed what I had left. I had basically nothing but my guns. I managed to fill up 2 bottles with water, and I checked the TV again. All I got was ads and curfew reminders. If I want to find out what's going on here, I'm gonna have to head into town. So I headed out, breaking into a light jog. Then I had my first encounter. There was a broken down car on the road, and 2 people. The woman started shambling towards me. Something clearly wrong. I panicked and pushed her back, making her fall to the floor. Sluggishly, she got up, and I drew my gun, shouting again. I pulled the trigger to let off a warning shot, but the mags weren't loaded. I smacked her with the gun, sending her back again, and fumbled with the pistol. I unslung the rifle, firing a warning shot, but she kept coming. So I took a second shot and it ripped right through her. She's dead. I shot like it was a 9mm. I've killed her. I shouted out to the man before running away. I ended up at the neighbour's house, sat with my head in my hands. What the fuck was going on? I loaded my pistol, telling myself that it's less lethal. I pulled myself together and headed back out, taking to the fields to avoid the man, and emerging at the chicken farm, where there were more people. I recognised them. They were the farm boys from the chicken farm down the road. They, too, started walking towards me. I ran into the corn rows, losing them and resting on the other side. I thought, was this some kind of disease? Something people were catching from the farm animals? As I got closer to town, there were more and more people, all the same, wandering aimlessly until they spotted me. I avoided them all as best I could. Eventually I made it to the gas station, the de facto centre of Echo Creek. But it was a ghost town. All the doors were locked, no boards or signs explaining what was going on. Emerging from the basement, I heard banging. I shot him clean in the face, and it barely staggered him. The other one seemed unfazed, completely fixated on the door. One followed. With my foot on his chest, I made myself look at him. His skin was pale, his eyes devoid of colour, covered in blood, and a putrid odour emanating from him. I stepped back, and as he got up, I put one in his head. I cleared the glass from the window and broke in, looking around for someone normal, or maybe some keys to open the shops downstairs, or a working phone. Sadly, I found none of them. My attention was drawn to the TV when I heard it playing.
If you're just joining us, survivors have emerged from inside the exclusion zone. They are scared, hungry, and come with shocking revelations. First came the fever, then came violence and a hunger for blood. Everywhere inside the zone is now infected. It is claimed everyone has succumbed. There is now a renewed anger all along the camps on the boundary. The military have pulled back into their checkpoints. America sits on a knife edge. The one question on everyone's lips: why weren't we told? The curfew begins at 6 p.m. EST.
Infection is spread through direct contact with sufferers. At one point, it was spread more easily. We don't know how. Now, however, transmission is possible. The Noxavant infection has a variable incubation period. After incubation, the loss of rational thought is seemingly inevitable. Sufferers will attack each other and non-sufferers. There is no known cure. We are expecting an official statement on these revelations imminently.
First and foremost, we are safe. America is safe. Today, we can confirm that yes, the nature of the Nox event is degenerative. It causes panic and confusion among sufferers, some of whom will then perform acts that are un-American. The initial period of contagion is over. There's absolutely no need for further panic. Sufferers are not deceased. We are establishing the likelihood of discovering a cure. At this stage, the infection is passed only through direct fluid contact. My thoughts are with those poor souls behind the event line, but this is contained. It has always been contained. We are safe. America is safe.
A Pyrrhic wave of relief rolled over me, quickly being replaced with the dread I'd been feeling since it all started. At least it was in self-defense. I couldn't let them touch me, but damn. Damn! I'm inside the zone. There are others, but does the whole world think we're gone? Is this curable? Or are we gonna be cold? Like diseased cattle? I took some food from the kitchen and cautiously left. The man downstairs still banging on the door. I'd woken in a horrible panic. I wasn't able to get back to sleep, so I snuck over to the neighbours to see what was left. A hammer, 2 knives, and a sewing kit was all I found. I also took some curtains and sheets so I could cover the windows, stopping the light from being seen from outside.
Now! There is no need for panic. The Nox event is contained. It has always been contained.
Richard. Shocking events on the event boundary. We will keep you updated.
I covered up the windows and turned on a radio I'd also brought back. It repeated more of what I already knew, about the riots, how the contagion spreads, and the curfew. I was getting worried about supplies, mainly food and water. If I'm going to ride this out, I'm going to need a lot. The gardening centre out of town seemed like a good start, especially since they'd reported a rabbit infestation. So I set off, eventually running into another person. It didn't feel as bad putting them down this time. There were some inside, but I was keen to check the car. If I had a vehicle, it'd open up a lot of options. I killed the one in the overalls, and began taking everything of use. Clothes, books, seeds, and got the hell out of there. It was an exhausting trek, so I stopped to wash in the river, and ended up at the other neighbours by accident, finding little there. It looks like they had guns, and someone took them in a hurry. I eventually made it home, and collapsed straight into bed. It had been a week since I set off on that hunting trip. A week since everything was normal. I was hungry. I could tell I was losing weight, and just barely scraping by with what little food I'd found at the neighbours. It was time to work on something that would see me through this. I started reading the books on farming and agriculture, learning of the growing seasons of all the seeds that I'd taken from the gardening centre. Being late July, I could plant leek, lemongrass, lettuce, rosemary, and a bunch of others that are now slightly out of season, like kale, comfrey, and mallow. The main growers were completely out. I couldn't grow wheat or grains for at least a few months, but I could maybe eke out a harvest of cabbage, broccoli, or carrots if I got lucky with the weather. I also found some other books that helped me, like A Beginner's Guide to Foraging, which I read as the news played, but I couldn't keep focused for long. The TV and the radio were blowing up with news reports.
All reports indicate that violence and gunfire in the border camp caused a surge of infected civilians that broke through the border.
The army are pulling back.
I'm sorry to say this, but some folks have been left behind. Folks who were bitten.
The curfew begins at 6 p.m.
There was an attack at the rest stop. A child was thought to be sleeping. He suddenly woke up and inflicted a wound on his mother. A crowd formed. I walked away.
The curfew will be enforced until further. It's spreading fast, and it's spreading without fluid contact. It's chaos here.
People are hungry, and people are fighting. And now, they're falling ill.
My father, he's not bitten. He hasn't seen one of those things. But now he's laid low with the fever. They'll kill him.
Louisville officials have urged residents to stay in their homes, a request now seeming futile, with chaos on the interstate and huge lines at gas stations.
Go get your guns, people. Lock them, load them, keep them that way. Protect yourself, and protect our future. This is it. We're ready. God bless. Good luck.
Everything looked so bleak. Whatever quarantine zone I was in, it had been broken. It's gonna spread. Am I gonna be able to wait this out? Is there even gonna be anything to wait for? No, surely. The military can just expand the quarantine, or they can do something. I just need to focus on myself, on staying alive. I kept myself occupied by reading, and I ate the last of the venison I had, and tried to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night. I'd put out some buckets and pots to collect water, since there was no pressure left in any of the taps. The news kept reporting. Symptoms appeared within 24 hours, and cases were reported in nearby states. One of the reporters spoke of immunity, explaining how some people weren't getting the symptoms, despite everyone around them falling ill. Maybe that's the case here, with me, but I couldn't bank on that. I've tried to keep clean and avoid them as best I can. I put on my jacket and headed out. I figured the neighbours weren't coming back, so I might as well take anything of use. Their water is out too, but there's still a little pressure in their taps. Just down the road to the south is a farm warehouse, which I checked for supplies. It wasn't harvest season, so I found little, and most of what I found was going off. I'm sure it'd roast up or go in a soup just fine. However, the next house down had a couple outside, which turned into a dozen when I started shooting. I panicked and started missing my shots. Hiding in the warehouse, I checked my mags. I only had 7 spare rounds left, on top of the 30 in the magazines. I needed to be more careful with my shots. The house was locked down pretty tight, so I broke in the back and cleared it. I was only rewarded with meagre supplies. The final house on the street was pretty beat up, but it had some good supplies. Some hygiene products, don't want to run out of toilet paper, some warmer clothes, a baseball bat, food, and in the basement was a full water dispenser. I marked the location on my map. I caught the end of a broadcast when I got home.
Savagery without a thought. Murder on automatic. The embodiment of death. Welcome to hell, America.
I realised I was waking up too late. I'd use an alarm from now on. The constant drone of reports meant I'd zoned it out, but I did catch the end of one. It had spread to Europe, Asia. It spread to every continent on the planet. Shit. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the end. But there are people out there. The news is still reporting. The electricity is running. It's just that the whole world is going to shit. Some are being left behind. Like me. Left behind in this hell. With the close call yesterday, I tried to protect myself with knee and elbow pads. It'd be best to also wear my jacket, but it was way too warm, and I needed to go out for supplies. I was curious to see if the chickens on the ranch to the north were still alive. On the way there, I checked a house with a car outside. I broke in, finding a few supplies, including a VHS on wilderness survival, and a car key! I rushed outside, and it unlocks the car. I try and start it, but no gas. I need to go to the gas station and check for fuel ASAP. Back inside, I check the radio, and find it tuned into the emergency station. I take the battery and mark the frequency on my map. I continued to the farm, but spotted movement in the fields. A doe. I pulled out my rifle, and snuck as close as I dared. It wasn't a great shot, but I took it. And nailed her. I hauled the body back to the side of the road and caught my breath. Someone wandered over, having heard the gunshot, and it takes 4 shots to take him down. I'm down to 30 rounds now. I could butcher the deer here, but really, I needed a butchering setup. I thought about making one, but my woodworking skills weren't really up to the task, so for now, I did it in the field. It was too late to continue to the farm now, but it had been a productive day. As I reached home, the radio was playing a speech from the general.
The disease will not spread to you as it has others, but through fluid contact, by which I mean bites, it surely will. The time has come to bear arms against this threat. They may be your family, they may be your friends. Do not hesitate to pull the trigger. These are dark days, but as a nation, we can and will prevail. You have not been forgotten. We will come for you. General John McGrew, out.
Maybe there's hope after all, after this plague has washed over us. I really hope I meet someone soon. It had been 10 days. I didn't want to think about it. I made some stew with the rainwater, veggies, and deer. I sat down with the survival VHS and my stew. I ate the whole pot. I could feel the weakness of weight loss. I put the pot back outside to collect rainwater. I felt I'd better go check on those chickens. After a long trek, I arrived. None in the first pen, but there were infected people. I decided not to shoot. I grabbed his shoulder and jammed the knife through his skull. It was a clean kill. Another came. I pushed it over and stabbed that one in the head too. I thought about cleaning my hands in the water troughs, but I thought twice. Who knows what's been in there. There were chickens still alive, although there were also carcasses in the same pen. I wondered if the disease affected animals too. I could only imagine it not to be the case, and the deer I'd eaten hadn't made me ill, so... The chickens had food and water, enough for a good while. Perhaps I could collect their eggs every once in a while, but my thoughts were interrupted by a whirring. A helicopter! I rushed out to the main road, waving my arms, but they either didn't see me or didn't care. It flew away, but it still gave me a great sense of relief to see life. I made a mental note that it flew northwest. Unfortunately, it had the side effect of riling up all the infected on the farm, but between me, the chickens, and the distant chopper, they were confused. They made for great target practice. I kept searching the ranch, the home here also being broken into. It's a shame. It looked like a nice place to live. It did have a really creepy basement though. As evening came, a storm rolled in, and I decided to stay the night. How was this home any less safe than mine, with its broken windows? It did feel very weird getting into someone else's bed, but I woke up in a fright, not knowing where I was. Counted my rounds to calm down. I had 17. Thunder and lightning woke me in the morning. Rather than get soaked walking home, I decided to keep looking around. The house was 2 stories, and there was a shed with plenty of logs, and of course the chickens, one of which scratched my foot as I tried to check the coop. I decided to move the bodies of the infected away from the chickens, not knowing for sure how this thing spreads. It was exhausting work, and more infected had made their way onto the ranch. Being too tired to fight, I shot them as they came, but it quickly became too much, and I ran out of ammo. I pulled out my rifle, but more were making their way around the fence. I tried to sneak away, but I was exhausted. I dumped my bag on the drive. I tried to stab one who followed, but I was too weak, and she got back up. I ended up running into the fields, soaking in the storm, and exhausted, until I reached a barn. The corn husks had gashed me across the face, and the mud had gotten into my foot wound and infected it. I treated them as best I could, and passed out. I woke up at 4 AM, still tired. The wound on my foot looked much better, but now the wound on my face looked infected. I used my last bandage to clean it. As I drank the last of my water, the storm was still raging. If I waited any longer, I'd soon pass out again, so I braved it, this time avoiding the corn. I grabbed my bag, then snuck into the house, only to find 2, then 3, then 4 infected, forcing me to run. I pushed myself into running further than I ever thought I could, and I made it home, exhausted beyond belief. I stuffed the dead chickens into the fridge, changed the bandage on my face, and passed out. It was about 8 PM when I woke up. The gash on my face was looking much better. I put on a hoodie, then butchered the chickens. Meanwhile, a radio transmission played. Someone alone, sick, a bleak comparison to McGrew's speech. I cooked up a chicken roast, eating it straight out of the pan. I still didn't have any utensils. Then I decided to start reading more of the books I'd collected. A book on basic trapping seemed useful, as well as another foraging and a mechanics book. I decided to take stock. I had 60 rounds left for the rifle. and that was it. The ranch had shown me that it was loud. Even in a little rural town like Echo Creek, it drew in more than I could handle. So I fashioned a spear out of broken glass from the windows and a wooden shaft. I had no idea if it would be effective, but at least it was long. Despite eating, I still felt the weakness of losing weight. I was burning so many more calories than I'm used to. I carved up some more wood, making an extra spear, and sharpened my hunting knife, before setting off to the gas station. Almost there, I passed the laundromats with the car outside, and the key was in the door. I tried it, but again, no gas. But the station is only across the road, and when I checked the trunk, I found a gas can. So I crossed the street, filled up the can, and fueled up the car. It started! I drove it over to the station, and filled the tank to the brim. This opens so many options. I broke into the store, which had a load of food, and 3 more gas cans to fill up, as well as a bunch of tools. By the time I was done looting and drove home, it was 1 AM. I sorted all the new tools, then ate 4 tubs of ice cream, and passed out in a food coma. After sorting everything, I headed out with some fuel to grab the van. Then I headed to the station to fill up the tank, stopping at the ranch to grab some stuff I left. But I got ambushed on the way out, getting my right arm scratched and losing my glasses. I rushed to the van to drive off, disinfecting my wound. I made it to the gas station, rushing inside to clean myself and the wound. I checked the bodies for glasses, but nothing. I headed back, hitting zombies due to my poor sight. I knew I had to go back and grab the glasses. I'm shaken up by that wound, so I resigned myself to clearing the road, grabbing the trailer from where I made my first kill, and planting some more seeds. With a vehicle, I could ferry a lot more supplies, so I decided to go back to the gardening centre, grabbing feed for the chickens, as well as supplies I couldn't carry last time, and also broke apart some shelves for wood. I decided to leave to the north, to refill the tank, but got distracted. Fuck. That ruined the engine. After stopping to check an ambulance for supplies, the car started stalling. I still managed to get to the gas station, fill up, and head home. Judging by the amount of infected, I didn't think there were any survivors in Echo Creek. I don't blame them. I'd have fled too, especially if I lived in the trailer park. I used the wood I'd gathered to board up the broken windows. Then I boiled some water and went to bed. My short-term needs were met. I had about a month worth of supplies. Plus, the chickens and the crops gave me some mid-term sustainability, but I really doubted McGrew would come to a lazy little town like Echo Creek. I figured I was on my own. I ate a roast while I contemplated things. It had been a minute since there were any broadcasts. I spent the day studying and maintaining myself, shaving my beard, cooking extra to try and gain weight, and heading out to collect some river water to boil. I passed a horde on the way, which seemed to be centered around a man who seemed well equipped. I treated myself to a bottle of wine before settling in for bed. After I ate a fry-up, I headed back to the river to wash all my clothes. On the way, I stopped by some of the houses. I found a corpse with a gun. He didn't look infected. Clearing the rest of the house, one of them surprised me and cut my hand up real bad. The next house proved hard to clear with the wound, but I was rewarded with a car and its keys. I left it and continued to the river, marking down where I saw some rabbits, and running into the horde I'd passed yesterday. Driving past them seemed to break them up, and I was able to take them on, getting some advanced books, shotgun shells, and a satchel bag. I headed back to the new van and tried to tow it, but couldn't get enough traction, even when I fueled the van and tried to tow the car. So I headed back, clearing the wrecks from the road, grabbed a bite to eat, then went back with some fuel to grab the van. I sorted the new books, and familiarized myself with the shotgun. I'd kept myself busy, but the loneliness was creeping in. The hopelessness was getting harder to ignore. My food was going stale, and in my contemplation, I was making stupid mistakes. I spent the day moping inside, eating all the food that was close to going bad, finally able to curb my weight loss. I woke up in a panic again. What was I doing? My food was running out faster than expected, and the radio transmission stopped nearly a week ago. I was on my own. I could only keep myself occupied to distract myself from it all. I needed more food. I could check all the homes on the west side of the creek, but there was also the shooting range and industrial area. I felt more confident in my hunting skills than farming. For now, I decided to check on the chickens. When I arrived, they were infected, so I cleared them out, hopefully this time for good. As I collected the eggs, I noticed that they were all hens. There were no cockerels. This would be the last generation of these chickens. All the eggs had been unfertilized. Great for eating, but the finality of it saddened me. But as I finished collecting eggs, I noticed one chick, the only male on the farm. I moved him into a new enclosure. I wanted to avoid any inbreeding. He could be the last hope for this farm, for my hopes of sustainability. I headed inside, cleaned a cleaver, and butchered the dead chickens I'd found. I started heading home, but the road was full of infected. I tried to fight them, but quickly ran out of shotgun shells. I switched to an ice pick, and a brawl broke out. Fuck! I'd missed the one crawling on the ground, and he reached up, tearing up my inner thigh. I was exhausted. I knew I couldn't fight any more of them. So I lured them away from the car, the engine still running, and drove the hell out of there. When I got home, I started cooking, but ended up throwing it in the fridge and passed out. It was getting worse out there. I gorged myself to keep the weight on, and started carving bones from the first deer I'd shot. I could bind the sharpened bones to sticks to make spears, hopefully more effective than the glass ones that broke. I cooked a bunch of eggs for the road, and headed out, this time to get wood for carving. Another helicopter flew over as I left. It too either didn't notice me, or didn't care. After breaking up crates for planks, I dropped them off, then headed out to salvage some leather from the infected corpses. I could tell that my aim was getting better. I headed home and fashioned 2 bone spears with the leather scraps. I set off to the chicken farm and tried taking a shot at a deer as I drove, but no luck. I did run over 2 rabbits in the process though. I won't let them go to waste. On the way, I used the spear to kill 2 infected, which was enough to break them. It was such a disappointment. I reached the chicken farm, checking that they had food and water, and cleaned the coops. Then I headed back home to sleep. I checked the TV, even though I knew it was pointless. After breakfast, I checked the emergency frequency. Nothing but the automated weather report. And when I went out to check on the crops, almost all of them were withered. My heart sank, taking my plans of sustainable farming with it. I retilled the land, but I had little hope. Even that small amount of work was enough to burn off crucial calories, so I spent the rest of the day resting, reading, and eating. At the end of the day, I decided to practice loading my guns, and realised I'd looted 2 boxes of 9mm that I forgot about. I began devoting myself to exercise, seeing just how far I could push my body. I wanted to know exactly what I was capable of when push came to shove. I also began tinkering with the cars, taking the worst I had and stripping it of parts, hoping that something had come in handy for keeping the others running. All the while, I pushed my body further and further, taking breaks to read mechanics and electrical books in hopes of being able to hotwire and salvage more cars. But 4 days of barely leaving the house killed my motivation, so I decided to head out and check on the chickens. There were plenty of eggs, but the chickens were still dying. Something was still getting to them. I needed to protect the male chick, so I moved him and some equipment into the basement so he'd be safe. It felt cruel, but it was necessary. When I went downstairs to check on them, it was pitch black. The lights wouldn't turn on. None of them would. The power was out. I took them all back to their pens. I couldn't bring myself to make them live in darkness. Using the new mechanics knowledge, I check out the car on the ranch. I managed to expose the wires, and it even started, but I came to realise something. I drove up to the gas station and confirmed my worries. The pumps were off too. I'd seen a generator somewhere, so I grabbed it, but I had no idea how to hook it up to a home's electrical system, let alone to a gas pump. I decided to also take a propane grill, since my oven was electric. At least I still had a way to cook and to boil water. I put the chickens and the eggs in the fridge. It was muscle memory, but it's not like I had anywhere better to put them. This changes things. Now I need shelf-stable food, or a steady source of food. So I took a long look at my map, circling points of interest in Irvington, Rosewood, Doe Valley, and Brandenburg. There are also some inconspicuous locations around Echo Creek, like the Meadshire Estate, or the shooting range. The range especially caught my attention. Those supplies could help if things were bad in the bigger towns. So I decided to get ready for a trip. I picked my best car, hitched the trailer, and loaded all my fuel and weapons. I armoured up, boiled as much water as I could, and headed out to the shooting range. I stopped short of the range to scope it out on foot. I skirted around the edge and looked in. Holy shit! I tried to lure them to one corner, but they were coming out of the woods. I started shooting, but it just got worse and worse. I fell back, reaching a farmhouse. I tried to hold them at the fence, but I was getting exhausted. My hands got so sore, I could barely swing my weapon. I used all 100 rounds of 9mm that I had, and I was rewarded with little. The farmhouse was boarded up, but broken into. There wasn't anything of value left. I hotwired the pickup outside, but no fuel. I made a mental note to remember, in case I needed it later. Then I headed back to the car, marking the insane horde on the map, then drove north until I felt I was a safe distance away, and slept. That horde had rattled me, but I had to move forward. I hoped I'd have better fortune at the Meadshire Estate. As I continued down the street, it only got more dangerous, but I'd managed to fight the exhaustion and looted a few supplies before heading back to the first house I'd cleared to sleep. It was foggy the next day, so I tried to sneak past the infected on the road. It worked, and I soon found myself at the perimeter fence of the estate. I lured some over before hopping inside. It was a furniture store, not really what I was hoping for. I took a few supplies from the storage room before hiking back. That was another location ticked off, with little gained. But I had remembered that the hunting store was only up the road, so I decided that that was the destination for the day. I pulled up out of earshot and proceeded on foot. Even after killing a significant amount, they just kept coming. But I had a plan. I ran to the front of the store and shot. That would draw them all out to the front. Then I'd sneak into the back. I let out a few more shots to make sure that they followed, then disappeared into the woods. It worked flawlessly. Those shutters could hold a horde, but the door wouldn't. I grabbed everything I could carry, and not risking a moment longer, I got out while I still could. It was a huge success. 8 boxes of 308, 2 boxes of 9mm, 8 boxes of shotgun shells, an M14, a revolver, and some other bits and pieces. I loaded my new mags. I was going back for more. This time I took the M14. I wanted to see how my aim was with it. And I was amazing. It went on for like 5 hours, my hands aching like hell. But when I looked beyond the tip of my gun, they kept coming. As high on success as I was, I could still see that this wouldn't end well. As I headed back, there were loads still out front, but I saw a car and decided to risk it. I drove it back to the car, swapped, then drove it a little further to safely sleep. I woke up the next day, still tired, but motivated as hell. I drove back to the new car and left it running to charge the low battery while I put some more fuel in. It wasn't worth bringing the new car home, but I had another idea. I braced myself and floored it. I couldn't believe how well that worked. I tried going back, managing to loot the hunting store, but attracting too much attention and retreating. But not before picking up an M16 from a soldier I'd killed earlier. The next day, I went straight back to grab everything that I'd left. It took me nearly all day just to cart it out. It barely even fit in the car. I went back and collected the tent, then drove all the way home. I practically had an armory at this point. Unfortunately, this is when the lack of refrigeration began to show its effects. The fridge was emanating a terrible smell. As I boiled some water, the helicopter flew over again. I grabbed my hoe and dug out an SOS sign in the hopes that they'd at least see me. I was looking at my map, trying to figure out what to do next. There was an airstrip at Brandenburg, which is in the direction that the helicopter always flew. Maybe that's where they were going. If I wanted to check, I'd have to drive up to Ekron, then down the highway, all the way to Brandenburg. So I decided that's what I would do. It was about time I checked the fate of the towns. But first, I had to prepare. This was no small trip. I headed out to wash in the river and to hunt some more food. Well, there was no point putting off the inevitable. I set off. The gas station note hadn't moved, nor had any of the cars. I filled up my cans. I ran into a significant amount of infected on the way. A bad omen. Eventually, I began to see the landmarks I recognized. I was approaching Ekron. Nothing could have prepared me for how many there were. Every street I drove down had a dozen of them, forcing me off-road to avoid them. I couldn't find a way through. Dead ends and blockages were everywhere. I had to back out. I was down to my last can of fuel and needed to siphon more if I was going to make it. There was only one way through. I had to get past the car on the tracks. I drove well out of town, making absolutely sure I wasn't followed. Eventually, I felt safe. I checked the condition of the car, and checked my map. I was going to have to avoid the highway into Brandenburg. Luckily, there was a rural track that I could follow to the outskirts. I set off before sunrise, reaching the start of the highway and quickly taking the first turn off. Brandenburg was a pretty big town. If Ekron was bad, this would be much worse. I couldn't just rush through this one. Eventually, I hit the southern highway into town, and stopped at a trailer house just beyond. Rather than risk repeating Ekron, I continued on foot. The next house along was boarded up. Oh right, there'd been a tornado a few months ago. I cleared the house, but my axe was constantly getting blunt, despite my efforts to keep it sharp. I felt I was far enough from town to shoot. But I didn't expect to hear a return gunshot. Someone was alive. I was awoken by banging. They'd followed me back. I figured it was best I moved, so I drove back to the highway and followed it up into town. That's when I saw the extent of the tornado damage, and the infected. Eventually I drove to the south end of town, where I figured a shopping centre was. I was able to get some booze from a liquor store, before heading into the supermarket, which looked quiet from the outside. That didn't go to plan. I ran back, hoping that I'd just drawn them all out, and tried to sneak in. There was just too many. I drove back out of town, ending up at a restaurant not too far away. I sharpened my failing axe, used some scrap wood to start a fire, and cooked some of the food I'd found, before drinking myself to sleep. even after working to clear the area for days. It seems to have had little effect. What was I even doing there? I should have just gone home. No matter how many I killed, there were always more. With my motivation waning, I wanted to try and get to the police station before I left. I went to the roof of the mall, shooting to draw the infected out, then drove into town. I parked up in a quiet spot, not realizing it was right next to the police station, then spent the next few hours fumbling around town, completely lost. Eventually I found the pharmacy. It was completely overrun, but I could use that to figure out where the station was. The police station was overrun too. So I shot on the outside, trying to lure them out. Then I ran back, into the perimeter, and caught my breath. But I didn't get much reprieve before they were on me. I tried to lure them out again, but this time was even worse. Then that damn helicopter flew over again. As long as that thing was riling them up, I couldn't do shit. It was now or never. I blasted through them to draw them away, then started shooting. Then the fucking helicopter came back. I was able to just about drive it to safety before it died. Now I had to try and keep them away from the station again as the helicopter riled them up. Eventually it left, and I was able to sneak back and hop the fence. I could hear more coming. I didn't want to get trapped inside. In the heat of the moment, I hadn't realized. Just like McGrew said, bites. It's all over. After everything. All the work I've put in. It's all pointless now. The only thing that kept me going was the idea of seeing someone before, you know. I figured the best chance of that was the airfield, so I packed up and headed over. There were bodies at the gate. And piled up, just like I'd done at the gas station. People had definitely been there. I found supplies, and a note. It read, "Survivor, we've been watching you. We saw your SOS. I'm sure you saw us in our helicopter. If you're reading this, then you followed us to our forward operating base. We left you some supplies. I'm sorry we couldn't leave more, but we had to leave in a hurry. We're based in the Louisville Central Hospital. There's 4 of us. Downtown Louisville is completely overrun. We've been using this airfield to scavenge for supplies in Brandenburg, but we made too much noise and now it's overrun. The towns of Riverside, West Point, and Muldra are also overrun. But if you can make it past into Louisville, we'll gladly accept you. I know it's a long way, but if you survive this long, you can do it. We need to stick together. I believe we're the last ones left. Good luck, God bless. Lieutenant Overbeck." If only I'd have gone there first. I took the supplies, then started the long drive home. I woke up today feeling ill. These are the only people I've heard from since everything collapsed. Since the radio transmission stopped. I just wanna see someone before I don't want to die alone. I'm gonna go to Louisville to try and find them. If anyone finds this, I really hope that things got better. If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna need my best gear. These are all the guns I have, but I can't take them all. Plus, I can only carry so much on me without being unbearably encumbered. So I prioritized the M16, the M14, the JS2000, and the M9, all of which have a shed load of ammo. This is goodbye, I guess. I'm leaving so much behind, but I have everything I need. Not that I... Never mind. It's a long drive. Better get to it. Ugh. Echo Creek? Hey! I got something over here! You really sure that's the same book? I mean, that would mean he's... I don't know what we should leave this guy. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring this video. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50RixterTricks to get 50% off, plus free shipping on your first Factor box.